All right, now let's make sure you can hear me. Let's make sure you can see me. Life is good. All right. Welcome back to section 4 of our lecture series, No Land for Good Men. I don't know if you check out that thing behind me, but if you would like to support the channel, if you would like to support the creator and this consciousness going by, go check out Cosmic Nomad's Rebel Souls shop and check out some of the cool gear we got on there. I don't know if we'll have a discount on there by now, but I'm pretty sure I want to do something good for you guys and everybody who's been supporting throughout the year. Tumultuous times, but support has been continuous, and that's something that I want to give gratitude for or give appreciation to. So check that out. There's probably going to be a discount on there the 25th going through the rest of the year. And then I don't know if it'll be some kind of clearance situation, but we're going to do not a rebrand because I don't want to call it that. I go through a lot of metamorphoses in my life. So we're going to call it a website adjustment probably through the first like 4 to 6 weeks of the year. But I move very fast, and I think a lot of things are going to change after this series gets released because I think I'm going to drop the whole entire thing, just like dropping a on the world or on the table on Christmas Day as like my gift to y'all. So, not to make this anything too promotional here. If you want to support the channel, you can check out those links. I have stuff in the description too if you want to check that out. But let's just stick with the consciousness here and let me change your mind. Let me change your world. And then you guys can decide all that other stuff on your own time. But let's get to what really matters right now. And that is going to be, forgive me, let me make sure that I have no alarms. Going to destroy this date that we're on right now. Bam. All right, word. Okay. You can see me? Perfecto. Let's make sure we're not getting blasted here. Perfect. Not a busy CEO, but I'm a CEO, so that phone will ring. So we concluded the last section based on the basically a synopsis as short and concise as I could have given it about social politics over the past 50 years, 60 years, and how personally I believe that they've been loaned to marginalized people. And now the marginalized people who aren't willing to fully sacrifice our autonomy and ourselves to this like new system that is being instated, really imposed upon us, forced upon us, we are now going to be punished by the master that we so ungratefully expected more humanity from. And this all plays in, like, the reason why I call this Revenge of the Master is because you got to remember this. There were children of the master or children inside the house that wanted to use people, or slaves, outside of the house. And they wanted to trauma bond with us and align our plight together as a means of exploiting us in our naivete and our ignorance to think that they cared about our well being. And the second we are outside slaves, outside field, the second we allow the master's kids to convince us to go in and fight back against the master, because that's in our humanity, that's just what's right. That's what a conscious human being would do. They would fight against their oppressor. What happens when the master who owns the land and the tools and has the network, what happens when he wants to fight back? What happens when he's tired of just taking it, of acting like he doesn't see this opposition rising in his face? What happens? And what happens to the people that convinced us, the field hands? I'm not saying that you shouldn't free yourself from slavery or liberate yourself. I'm just saying, what happens to those of us who were so conned to play this game alongside these people who wanted revenge from the master, but didn't tell us that when things got too shaky, they were just going to submit back to the master because at the end of the day, they're children of the master. And all of this social activism, this like advocacy and representation of marginalized people is just some like savior complex kink that a lot of these kids have when they feel their teen angst needs to get put to use in the working adult world. But that's way before they understand how the working adult world doesn't work by any logic other than continue to serve and perpetuate capitalism at the mercy of every single living thing in existence. Even if we have to make up things like NFTs and did the denote imaginary values of significance as a means of perpetuating capitalism into the future in a world that really doesn't need it. We have the technology to not need systems like that. But that's conversations that we're going to have further into the future. Right now, I'm just telling you that we have been conned by the master's kids to participate with them in helping them rebel against the master, only for them to just get tired or get bored or really figure out that there's no end to this race that we're running, because the point of it should be to liberate us. It shouldn't be to help them punish their parents, to punish their forefathers. Because at the end of the day, in their heart and soul, they understand the convenience of being able to submit back to under the wing of the master will always be something they have access to, and we don't. But when that happens, they leave us out to dry. We get punished for everything they inspired us to do against the master and for everything that the master wants to punish his own kid with. So you got to be smart about this stuff. It shouldn't only be about it. It shouldn't be about this. There shouldn't be an us versus them and this political like Super Bowl every single like for every conversation and every identity and every demographic. What are we doing to build the most encompassing community that includes the fullness of everybody, bro, but allows room for people to express that without infringing on others and actually meeting the needs of the people in those communities and protecting the ability to do that, not sacrificing that for some shareholder profit, bro. I'm not afraid, honestly. Like I knew this is the crazy thing. A little insight into my wild reality. I told a white woman that actually I told a handful of them, but I told one specifically that I was fairly close to that Trump was going to win in probably like April because too much of what was happening in America was just setting up for setting up for somebody who was a superhero. Like this country is so depressed and so defeated. It needs somebody who is beyond human. And the only way you can get somebody who's beyond human in a human society is if you just make them surpass human limitations, which is just beat the law. And of course, because of Trump's demographic, let's not act like we don't recognize that, he has a better opportunity of skating and living above the law and continuing to manufacture this illusion of the American dream as if you, a horrible person, can achieve the most amazing beauties and gifts of this society as long as you just keep going. Like it doesn't even matter if you have good intentions or you commit or you work hard or you're taking drugs or doing like abusing yourself or other people. It's just keep going. And it's meant to inspire a specific demographic of kids that look like they are born directly of Donald Trump. That's the only way I know how to describe it without getting called a racist. But the election was a sign of the state of America, not only what America wants to represent itself in the world, but it was a sign of, can you save us from this inner like parasite that we collectively as Americans are going to just pit on like marginalized people and is like destroying this country. Like who can save us from that international issue and who can save us from like maintaining our dominant power in like the world. And it's not going to be Kamala Harris, bro. It's going to be a successful businessman who never loses, even though every single business he's ever been attached to or run has probably failed, bro. And he's just like a real estate guru. And you can be a real estate titan, bro, as long as you have a lot of money, bro. That doesn't allow you to fail. I mean, the fuck. Anybody could do that. Anybody could do that. Let's not act like I'm crazy saying that. Anybody could sell, bro. And the crazy thing is, I'll add this in here too. If you gave black kids the opportunity to sell like high value products and high priced products instead of only letting them sell high priced products or high efficiency products, like in the form of drugs that are illegal, then I'm telling you a lot of more black people would be like way wealthier than you could ever imagine. But it's just simply the opportunity to sell products that are not only owned by black people, but are high value and allow us to retain a lot of that wealth in our communities is just non-existent. And every single industry that does have any kind of high value or upper class, upper echelon value is dominated by you know who to make sure that we don't have access to it. So if you don't want to talk about race, but we can talk about it every single day because for however many 270 years, that's the only thing that mattered. And it probably literally has mattered so much all the way until the civil rights movement. Like you guys think that race didn't matter until then, but literally race is the only thing that mattered for literally every single thing in human history until we decided to say, oh, you're a human being and maybe I should stop looking at race to judge you for that. Like you think, bro, but you don't. And you're allowed to live in ignorance. And that is part of the privilege that I speak about. So what you guys thought you were getting was a savior out of Trump. And obviously you're ignorant and most of you can't read. So you're not getting that. You can't read a book. You can't read a sentence. You can't read the room. You're not getting a savior. You're getting a saboteur. I think I'm saying that right. We're going in and we're sabotaging everything that ever could have been in this government that could have helped anybody that is not the demographic of American that we want to retain ownership through this next boomer wealth transfer happening over the next 25 years. Mobilize the inner cult. January 6th was just day one. January 6th was just day one. Mobilize the cult through consciousness, through being able to infect all of their influencers, being able to infect their spaces of community, being able to make sure that they only do what you want them to do and they only see and hear and receive what you want them to receive. And then start to create that divide inside the country of, well, am I a real American? And if I'm a real American, then there shouldn't be any fake Americans here. And then we start to divide each other based on who's more American than the other, competing against each other instead of building with each other to see that we align more in our struggle because so many of us don't have, rather than aligning in our identities, because this is a diverse nation. No matter how you want to put it. You brought Black people here to somebody else's land. So there's already 3 different types of people here. How do you not want this to be a diverse country when it's already, you made it diverse? Like, think about this. This is your fault. And then you're blaming everyone else for being diverse here, but it's your fault. You could have just stayed in Europe. And then we're just going to find ways to deny marginalized people opportunity. And by denying them opportunity, but opportunity that they've pursued. So like saying, hey, anybody can have opportunity and access to this, and then just not giving them access to this. Then we're going to punish them or justify giving them a title or an identity, whether it's through as a felon, it's this type of person, it's homeless. And then we're going to justify dehumanizing them enough to exploit them outside of their will to sustain the energy that we need to maintain the American dream for, I don't know, however many, 25 or 250 more years. This is gonna sound very weird or contradictory to the red hate that I'm spewing out of my mouth. But the only positive thing that happened because of this election that happened on November 4th is the fact that there's no more teeter-totter white liberal anymore. Like, you're either fully on the side of, hey, this world and society we live in only exists at the disproportionate levels it does because it's exploiting the livelihood of marginalized people and just picking a new group of marginalized people to hate on to do so and maintain itself while also exploiting everybody else's culture to maintain the top end and make it seem like this is a place worth living in. And then, or it's like, you have to just completely deny that the American dream is directly related to the exploitation of marginalized people, whether that's in our country or on some other place in the world. And more times than not, every single time America goes to destroy somebody's government or to incite a war somewhere, which is never a war, because we always are the predatory power, meaning it's always a genocide being incited, then you're telling me, I apologize. Like, maybe I'm just speaking too fast here, but you can't be in the middle anymore. You can't stare at marginalized people and go, hey, those people that are able to live in this state of delusional privilege where like racism doesn't exist unless they get their feelings hurt, and they're able to live in a world where the American dream isn't off the backs of you marginalized people. And they get to live in a reality where they will just be given more opportunity, not because they're more qualified or merit like based, simply because they are, and they make the people in that already owned community feel comfortable about themselves and reinforce the beliefs they already have of white supremacy that have to be perpetuated and reinforced to instate opinion into fact, but never held accountable so we can weed it out every single time it incites itself and any kind of racial supremacy ends up trying to incite itself. Because racism in itself is one of the most ignorant, idiotic perspectives on planet Earth. If that is hindering your ability to open your mind, I'm telling you, you are not smart. There's no way you can be smart if you think that some human beings are just like strategically, like human beings that are not accommodated by the earth are better than, I'm not even gonna say that. The only thing that's good is that now the people who are sitting in the, what I call the middle, because most marginalized people, whether they want to accept it or not, are living on the left. And then there's a bunch of people who want to be advocates for the left, and still think they can compete in the American system. Those are the liberals. And then there's people on the right who understand what America really is and want America to never change from that. So now this progressive liberal side is going to have to say, well, Mima, Papa, I'll come back to your side and I'll just let you guys be racist and I'll stop advocating for people that I don't care about or understand. And then there's going to be the people who go all in. And then a handful of people, which is going to be more than either side, more than go to either side, that just end up becoming like van life people and just like attempting to completely dissociate from reality, taking drugs every day or just knocking out, like, I don't know, going nomad and leaving the country. But it was important that we did not have another 4 years of, okay, we're in power, we're not going to do anything. Like, I understand that what's about to happen over the next 5 years is going to destroy the entire face of this country and probably the entire inside of this country as well. But at least something is getting done. At least something. Literally the only thing that was going to happen if Biden became president again was he pardons his son. That's the only thing that was going to happen. And that's the only reason why he was even running for a second term. And I'm almost 100% sure, I'm willing to stamp this on my own name. His son is the reason why he was going to run for that second election, because his son knew he was going to prison if Donald Trump won. And there wasn't a guarantee of being pardoned if Kamala Harris ended up winning or if anybody else ended up winning, because there's no direct connection to the presidency. Like, how selfish are these people? We don't even have to talk about Nancy Pelosi and Bernie Sanders. We can talk directly about Joe Biden himself. The person who wants, I don't even want to call him a man, the person who wants the entire world to wait for him and his health so we can fulfill his fantasy of being the president he always wanted to be, while living in his delusional grandpa, probably dementia-filled reality, and lose our country, lose our culture, lose the entire world and the entire West. And I'm not saying that from an ownership perspective. I'm saying that from a old people who don't know what accountability is and who've been waiting in line for a very long time and feel like other people are now taking opportunity that they want that are less deserving of them, are just bitter as hell, bro. And they just end up being so narcissistic. All they end up doing is everything to serve the self. People over the age of 60 years old should not be in federal government. People over the age of 60 years old should not be in federal government. They need to break down the presidency to be as low as 30, and more working professionals needs to be between the ages of 20 and 40 or 50. 20 to 50 should be a solid career or a solid path to transition careers and build enough of a lifestyle in a world where we don't need to be working 40, 60, 80 hours a week. That should be enough to build a career, a resume, and a lifestyle in alignment with education or building a family to actually contribute to the world that you live in. But again, you guys don't think, because literally all of politics, since we bought politics and the federal government has been bought as a whole, everything is just I want to go to the Met Gala. I want to go to this. I want to go to so and so award show. I want to meet Jay-Z. I want to just celebrity stuff. Everything. And it's sad that it's me, a young dude, talking to grown 80, 70, whatever, how old you are. All you look like plastic bags from freaking Stater Bros. It's sad that I'm the one who has to counsel you about this when there's so many young people my age and even older than me that have been waiting their turn in line to be accepted and validated by you, not knowing that you are the reason why they aren't living the fullness of the political careers they should be living in, impacting the people they should be impacting and serving every single day. Because you want a 30th freaking term, or you want to still be the leader of this, the leader of 8 different organizations, Bernie Sanders, the leader of 8 different organizations, instead of hiring 8 young people who can lead 20, 30, 40-year careers in these fields and raise the next generation and also give the next generation something to believe in. But the only thing you want the next generation to believe in is the lies that you sell. And now kids are too smart to believe that. It doesn't matter if you delete TikTok anymore. People are too smart. And I guarantee you there will be a lot more dummies than smart people. That's for sure. And that's your fault. But people who are smart and finally see what you guys are doing, especially people who watch this, you're cooked, bro. Like, I genuinely don't, I don't feel bad for how many fans you lose, bro. Because you've been lying. And all you needed to do was just protect the human rights and the ability to live a basic lifestyle for working class people. That's the only thing you needed to do. And all you guys did was run for re-elections and freaking become millionaires off a stock market that is just legalized gambling for rich people to popularize their mergers and acquisitions that are inevitably going to take place because more small businesses can't engage in that level of free market. It's a predatory concrete, a digital jungle at this point. Nobody's investing in anything. You're gambling on the livelihood of a business. That's all it is. I really don't feel like I have to explain this too much because you know exactly what I'm talking about. We already spoke about how DEI wasn't even made like by Black people for like the sake of helping Black or marginalized people have access to opportunity. It was made by forgive me for saying this, it was made by white people who felt bad about other people being oppressed and felt like they needed to do something to save those people by pushing us deeper into the communities and businesses of people who hate us instead of just giving us access to our own opportunity to own, and be self-sufficient. Because that would mean you can't own us, or you can't dictate how we are creating and cultivating our own unique sense of community and culture. And on top of that, you can't exploit and own us. So you have to include us and keep on getting us to bite the bullet and keep on saying, well, if you just joined us a little, if you just fixed yourself a little bit, if you just cut off all your hair and wore that naked, bald haircut, then we would accept you. If you just wore suits instead of wearing sweatpants every day, we would accept you. If you just drank coffee every morning and then had alcohol at night, we would accept you. If you just showed up to work 12 hours early every single day, 8 days a week, we would accept you. And do you see how it's always just another step when we are existing in their environment that they control and they dictate, when at the end of the day, no matter what we do, they can just look at you and say, I don't like you and I'm not accepting you. Why even fight these people and prove to them not only that we're amazing and more amazing than they are willing to accept us as, but allow them to be the beneficiaries of all the hard work we're doing, attempting to prove ourselves to them for that validation. We don't even get that validation for ourselves. And even worse, we don't even get to take that pain that comes from the rejection and say, you know what? I'm going to build my own thing. You know what? I'm going to take my own people that look like me and live like me, and I'm going to help change their lives. And I'm going to expand that, and I'm going to scale that, and I'm going to really grow that laterally. That's what they don't want us thinking. They just want us going to the next plantation owner. And again, don't take this as me being negative or speaking against a 9 to 5, but take this as me saying we don't own these businesses. Look at the owners and the executives, and even better than that, the shareholders of every single business that we work for, especially these ones that you guys want to feel all uppity about, the Google and Facebook and Netflix. Who are the executives? And all the money that's not being shelled to give to their kids and invest into their human banks that are called children will just be handed down to their peers and their friends that they engage with outside office hours, that they go to parties with, that they go to trips with, to the Hamptons, that they go to Boca Raton with. You know what I mean? These people aren't giving you the opportunity because you ended up having the most sales every single day for 10 years. Think about this. As a business owner, you give people opportunities that you want to work with. The best opportunities you give to people that you want to work with, and you keep people in the positions that they're already being the best at. If you are the best employee, entry-level employee, why would I progress you from there? Because that means I have to find a new best entry-level employee. And even worse than that, that means I have to compensate you better. And even worse than that, I have to pay you better. And even worse than that, I have to teach you new things. Are you starting to see this now? And when fundamentally these people not only don't care about us, but they are waiting for an opportunity to reinforce the stereotype that is fed to them from birth, that we are these savage animals that they should be afraid of and hate and be justified in punishing every single day. They're just waiting to reinforce their beliefs and impose those onto us. That's why the N-word happens to slip. That's why the this happens to slip. That's why the racist connotation happens to slip, or the racist joke slips. Because it's on the tip of the tongue. They're just waiting to feel justified in saying it. And this is why I don't like engaging, especially in a work sense. This is why I had to go self-employed and I had to go really in on the brands that I'm building. Because it's like, I am not going to engage around that, bro. If I can do my best to not engage around that and still be self-sufficient and take care of myself and still love myself and my blackness and my melanin, I'm going to do that. Because you can go ahead and keep that, bro. You can go ahead and keep all that nonsense, bro. I'm not seeking your validation. And I have to, especially as a black person, you have to mask so hard. And even worse, a black autistic person. You have to mask for the sake of being accepted by white people who already hate you, and then being accepted by neurotypical people. People who are, the bane of their existence is the social game that they play. So they're not even working most of the time. They're literally just playing the social game. And if you just go too far above them and you work better than them at what they do, then now they have some animosity because now you're forcing them to actually go to work. But if you're not as good as them, then they can just keep beating up on you and punch down on you because that's how they get their sense of self-acceptance, because they don't like themselves, because they don't know themselves. And they show up to these environments in the real world to figure out who they are. It's just like, I don't need to say too much with this slide right here, but look me in both my eyes. Hopefully they're not bloodshot right now. Look me in both my eyes and really sit here and tell me, when somebody can speak and the worst thing that they can lose is like maybe a brand deal or an opportunity, and then another person can speak and not the least, but a thing, like a reasonable thing that they can lose is their life. Is that widespread freedom of speech? Or is that freedom to become a martyr if you're a marginalized person? Like, it's not even funny, gang. The reason why it's even worse, like, it's not even just as bad as like who has access to freedom of speech and who doesn't. It's just going back to this chart that I just made here. Think about this right here as I'm about to describe it. Look at this as I'm describing what I'm saying. All marginalized people, like, we can't even divide ourselves or organize ourselves. Just all marginalized people are in this group right here. And we are fighting each other for access to the main stage. That is all expressions of white people. Like, how crazy is that? Instead of all expressions of humanity and then seeing how we can all work together, it's everybody is just not white or is just not human. And then let's see how many different types of white people we have here. Like this is why I always talk about white supremacy, because it's just the most inbred psychosis. 100%, 100% inbred psychosis. So if all marginalized people are in here before we even get a chance on the main stage, we're fighting against each other to figure ourselves out. We don't even get to know ourselves. We're automatically fighting for the validation of other people who get to just walk around with their balls hanging out, dragging them on the ground. Figuratively, I apologize for that. So instead of having this widespread collective discussion where there's just collective community opportunity, and then people and individuals and tribes get to communicate or get to contribute to that, sharing that with everybody, we have one group of people that wants to be the superior. So they're the only ones that get to exist in diversity. They're the only ones that get to exist in the leadership roles or executive roles of social development and execution. The consequence of that is when we have people like Kanye West saying Bush hates black people, he's valid in saying that. He's 100% right in this country and outside of this country. Because let's talk about Hurricane Katrina, and then let's talk about the Iraq War. Bush hates black people. You don't have to. He's the president for both of those. He doesn't care. And this is in a term. He's right, right? But we're not allowed to say that because we marginalized people are already in a position craving the validation of not only the people who own the media networks, but the fans of the people of the media networks. And what do they happen to do? Oh, those happen to be indoctrinated by the same stereotypes that negatively portray our people. That's not the only problem, though. I'm trying to still get to the problem. The main problem with this is that you force marginalized people to have such ridiculous amounts of credibility to access a space where there's only so few people that genuinely need credibility, if anybody does, because their inherent skin color is the credibility. So there doesn't need to be any kind of brain development or any kind of social awareness or any kind of actual lived experience or reception to be able to contribute consciously. It's just automatic. A phenotype makes you automatically more superior to somebody. The way that the sun burned your people makes you more human than others. Like, think about how stupid that is. Think how stupid that is. And even worse, there was black, white, every type of color person existed in Africa before colonization. Every single type of people existed in Africa before colonization. So this European like white supremacy, it's all made up, bro. Like, it's all made up, bro. And the worst part is that it's religiously backed. Like, as much as they don't want to say it, it's literally religiously backed. But I'm getting a little lost at the point. When we're fighting so much for credibility and these guys are allowed to walk around balls hanging to the ground, you have people like Alex Jones say a real school shooting, a real school massacre that happened. He gets to say that that's a conspiracy theory. And he gets to promote that to millions, if not hundreds of thousands of listeners on his platform that he has developed cult consciousness on, because he's selling them dreams that coddle not only their trauma and their lack of groundedness in reality, but coddle their fear and insecurity as to their lack of acceptance of what reality is. Because that's what a lot of conspiracy theorists are. If they're not just purely in psychosis, they're so afraid of not feeling confident in being grounded in reality. They need something to hang on to that aligns with the confusion that they're innately experiencing or they're experiencing internally. But you allow these people to be more credible and to build brands and platforms and sell products off these brands. Then you allow marginalized people to not only tell their own stories and speak to their own people, but to be able to be included in the conversation. Because we're so busy fighting against each other for the validation of these people who are just saying anything because they don't know what it's like to be held accountable, especially because intellectual thought and superiority perceived outside of them makes them so insecure, especially from people that they've been indoctrinated to believe are inferior to them, that they'll just cut our legs off straight up. The rules just don't apply when it means being so afraid, doing anything at whatever cost to reinforce that inner psychosis. That's why fear is a very, very, very important energy to understand, because when you aren't understanding of and in relationship with your fear, because fear can be a tool of guidance into self-discovery. But when that's not how you're perceiving it, it's used to manipulate you. People sell you conditional salvation as a means of getting you to cling on to whatever they're giving you. And as long as they can get you to cling on to themselves, then they'll just keep on feeding you anything to cling on to, because they know that you'll never uncling on or take yourself off from them and cling on to your own damn self. We already spoke about this, Elon, and how there was like this manufacturing of we first have to sell these ridiculous dreams of a metaverse or of Mars as a means of front loading the people, and almost like uh I don't know how to say this without just being super like not safe for work. So you're basically like bringing you're bringing the people almost to climax, and then before they get there, you stop. And then not only do you stop, but you stop, and then a bunch of people rush the person and just start beating up the person. Like, how drastic is that? You're engaging, and mind you, I have to just maybe I have to roll this back. So you are talking to this girl for a couple of weeks or months. You guys go on a date, or you're going to go on a date. You go and you get in the car, you pick her up. Looks kind of sketchy where you at, but it's cool because she's bad. You go on the date, you have a great time. Come back from the date, feeling good, and then in her car, or you're in the car about to drop her off, and you kiss her in the car, right? And then things start getting a little heavy, and then you get to that point, and now as you're about to, I don't know if I'll put this on the podcast because there's a lot of things I don't say here, but you're about to, now she says, "Oh, I gotta go. My mom's calling," or something. Gets up, leaves. You're sitting there, you understand. She leaves, and not even 30 seconds after she leaves, mad niggas come around. Bah, 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 on your head, bro. You didn't even finish. And not even that you didn't finish. Now you are finished because you decided to mess with the hood princess. And you cared so much more about getting yourself or fulfilling your fantasy. You did not care to do any kind of background research. You did not care to research the hood that you was in. You did not care to research the women that you talking to. You did not care. None of that. You only cared about what you was getting out of it. And that's what we have a lot of our society diluted in. Thinking that, oh, AI, we're just going to integrate AI. Like, that's going to be good for everybody. Like, it's just going to make society so much easier. Mind you, we already don't pay people living wages for working 40-hour weeks. Sell us the dream. We'll get there. They'll give us what we want. Oh, they'll show us a little bit of what we want. And then they're just jerking us a little bit until they can get us to the point where we say, you know what? I'm all in. I'm going to completely let go of awareness of my surroundings right now. And I'm just going to buy the dream that you're selling me. And right when they get us there to where they know we are fully 2 feet off the ground, trusting them, that's when they rip the ground up from under our feet. And that's when we're gone. And that's when they really show us, hey, you know what? Only 10% of people can access this because they are deserving. And then 20% of you can fight for opportunity to try to get that one spot that'll help you join that 10%. But everybody else has to be a slave. That'll just be like a quote unquote necessary evil that needs to happen to fulfill this, especially if it starts failing early. And even the metaverse itself is failing. And Zuckerberg put billions into that. So we will, I'm telling you, bro, there's no way to do it. There's no way to sustain it. And it's not even allowing the people to see that free energy exists, because that would stop this whole entire like oil empire, this oil, what do you want to call it? This oil cartel that's globalized the world. It's I just before I even get to making like specific, just angry, like I like these tech CEOs. I just want you to look at this part right here. Tech bros sacrificed our modern world to enter us into an eternal digital psychosis. One thing I want to say is this. Like one thing I'm starting to realize is, and another reason, one of the reasons why I'm not buying any of the crypto situation is strictly because it almost reminds me of like what the capitalists did with just fiat currency and like the American dollar. We're gonna try to, or not even just the American dollar, but just fiat currency and like material currency, period. We are going to create an economy that literally back end allows us to own everything by the under the pretense that we give everything value. So we have to own it at least in the least access to it as a means of giving it value. And then we own the infrastructure that allows you to transact that. But when we start to give all of the value of everything that we can see and perceive in our society, when we give all of that to money, or we create a system that allows people to denote that the only value that can be is in relation to what society deems is acceptable to be, we don't, as individuals on like a interpersonal level, get to determine the value of these things that we're exchanging amongst each other. And they want to convince us that bartering is like some savage nature, like transaction, and capitalism is the only thing that really works. No, no, no. You can't overhead own bartering. You can't just say, okay, everybody who barters everything here, I'm going to own and get a percentage off of every single one of you. You can't. Like, it's so many transactions happening at so much. And even better, bartering is in not having an established sense of value for what it is beforehand, especially before you're attempting to make a transaction with somebody. You have to not only be keen as to the value of what you're being given, but you have to be able to defend and stand up for the value that you are attempting to sell off and give to somebody else in exchange for something. And that the amount of interaction and engagement that happens in denoting the value and sharing value and building relationships amongst the value that has been exchanged is so much more important for humanity than just being able to give somebody a piece of paper in exchange for something or a service and then completely abandoning the human interaction that needs to happen in relation to that. And mind you, ever since we started to implement that, like, okay, now all of this stuff can be valued in relation to this material thing. And you have to just, we've been trying to convenience not only people's ability to not have to engage intimately in their transactions of their day-to-day life, but also make it easier for people to exploit just mass encompassing systems of this wealth exploitation. Or forgive me, I may have said that wrong, but create these just giant plantations or giant infrastructures that allow masters to use capitalism as a tool to exploit the wealth from inside of those communities, rather than the people in those communities not only denoting their own unique significance for the value that they're cultivating because they have the most unique relationship to it, but also being able to own that as it relates to their maintenance of it. You just allow people to say, well, I bought that piece of land. I own that. I shared that. I sold that. So that's mine now. Instead of, I am responsible for this part of the world. I cultivate this. I care for this. Meaning I don't own it, but the relationship that I have with it is better than the relationship people who don't take care of it would have. So I should be in ownership, or at least in alignment with it, more so than somebody who doesn't care for it or simply wants to own it for the sake of making more ownership value from it. So I don't even know if I got to the point where I was saying like I don't like crypto, but I think crypto's attempt, it's like another phase of attempting to take more value that has already been transitioned to paper money and then almost like redoing that again. But the scariest part is that we will be, once we finally denote some level of value for every single thing in existence on planet Earth, That means every single thing in existence has the opportunity to be owned by somebody. And if we don't create a healthy system of capital ownership, then all we're going to do is just landslide ourselves into the entire world having centralized ownership, whether it's by nations or it's just globalized ownership and some like one world monopoly. But that's all crypto is going to do. Like, it's not going to make anything easier. And mind you, there's a lot of people that are defending crypto in the sense of like, oh, it's decentralized and like nobody's going to be like tracking your transactions. What kind of illegal transactions are you making to where you can't have the government track or the IRS track what transactions you're making? You're not freaking Pablo Escobar. And that's what a lot of you guys don't understand. Like, none of these systems, like none of this, what we're doing in our age right now, again, most of the crypto stuff is strictly gambling. Like, it's not real yet. And I want you guys to see that. The people who are in the tech space, and I'm telling you, like, I'm not somebody who's that deep. I'm fairly deep, but I'm not super deep. I'm not balls deep. I'm kind of deep. I'm like, not going to describe anymore. But people who are deep in the tech space are telling you right now, like, we are rushing AI to a point where like we don't even know it as well as we should know it to implement it into society at the levels that we're trying to. Two, we haven't even talked about the digital psychosis and the implications of the last digital rush that we just had, which was the .com boom and this like social media platform era, like the app era. We haven't even addressed the issues that have come from that. And we're moving into this next era. And mind you, the only people who will be sold into this hyper rush, like advancement of society and just this facilitated rate when there's no real like evidence to show for it, all those people will be at the mercy of these systems, like trial subjects into this new world of just either hyper convenience as what they sell us as, or we're spending a bunch of energy and resources for nothing, just to implode a third of the world. Like, I want you to start, especially if you're a fan of like traditional mainstream media. I need you guys to start seeking the information that you want, and you're going to realize that the world that is just presented to you is nothing like the world that really is. And there's a point, like there's a reason why we do that. There's a reason why we do that. I pointed at this part of the slide right here and I never even described it. But all of these different examples are just different levels or ways that big tech or just like the main technology industry has slowly sold us into our own, not only our own personal echo chambers, but has sold us into enslavement to the digital world they've created at the mercy of being able to not only be autonomous, but to have access to a healthy real world on the outside of it, like a Ready Player One society. And we're literally exchanging our real world in every way, shape, and form so these guys can continue to build their digital fantasy that doesn't serve anybody but themselves, because at the end of the day, the social media apps and the digital world that we create, it's not going to matter. The fact that these people are billionaires and the fact that they're billionaires and they're exploited wealth at such a young age is a problem, because they're going to be billionaires for another 30, 40, 50 years. That's a problem. That's a problem. Because these people aren't just going to open up charities and share wealth. Like, they would have already done that. These people are multi-hundred billionaires in a world where the rich only get richer. And with every one rich person that gets richer, plus one M, plus one B, there is hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people becoming so insufferably poor that they're just teetering life and death every single day for the sake of one bigger yacht, for the sake of one more party, for the sake of one higher class escort. Forgive me, maybe I wasn't supposed to say that. But again, a graphic that we described earlier, I think it was in section 2 or section 1, maybe we described it. You got to strip both sides of the world. You got to colonize them internally. Make the people just give up complete personal responsibility of the self. So they feel like every dime that they spend, like every time they're looking on the internet, they have to spend some money. Every time they exist in any platform owned by some greedy ass capitalist, you have to feel like you spend money and spend more money than you even have, doing something that you don't even need to do. And we're dreaming so far about Mars out there, but then we're also so afraid, or so afraid of the real world that we live in, that we want to resort ourselves and hide ourselves in this digital reality. That's going to save us. That's going to save us, right? The metaverse is going to save us from all those scary pretty girls out there. The metaverse is going to save us from all that rejection I don't want to take, right? The metaverse is going to, like, get the fuck out of here, bro. Grow up. Grow up. We're going to be slaves on Earth, bro, as a consequence of this. Because we were so afraid of other human beings and the consequence of other human beings that we wanted to be convenienced, and we didn't even want to engage with human beings. Well, guess what? Now we don't have to. Now we're all individually going to be enslaved, and we won't have to see other human beings ever. Another slide that was already mentioned in here, but I had to just include it anyway because I feel like you guys deserve to see it. And that is, we have just slowly, through that convenience that I'm describing, slowly been just allowed to lean off, or wean, I think that's the right word, wean off of systems that we were used to be dependent on. Forgive me, trying to find the right word. And as we progress through dependence on family, dependence on society, dependence on the press, dependence on going out into the world, and not only being somebody that could access the world, but the more that we surrender going out into the world and seeking the knowledge that we want, seeking the sustenance that we need, seeking the connection that we need. Unless we go out there, we're going to continue to reduce the significance that the outside world has. And we were going to continue to reduce protecting the outside world for the sake of maintaining the comfort that are that is the internet, that are these social media platforms, that will be at some point this AI, like this AR, VR reality that's going to completely stop people. Instead of seeing 10, 12-hour screen time, it's going to be 16 to 24-hour screen time. Big tech is just trying to find the cool, trendy way to get people to spend every second of their day on these platforms and to buy something every single day. It's just look at New York City. New York City is just a giant ass magazine that smells like piss if you're actually walking on the street, with rats the size of freaking phone books. A New York rat has got to be the size of a California possum. A New York rat has to be the size of a California possum. Mind you, some of the wealthiest, I'm pretty sure that might be the wealthiest state, if not Texas, in America. Or the wealthiest concentration of people live in New York. And what's sad is that their culture to them is just throwing ads on a bunch of businesses that look boring anyway. And then, oh, you guys are bored with all the ads just like posted on all these businesses or all these buildings, all these boring looking buildings? Well, why don't we just make them rotating? Oh, you guys don't like the rotating ads? What if we put you on the ad? It's just so stupid, bro. Like, there's no creativity, there's no fun, there's no uniqueness, there's no nuance, there's no difference. There's no revolution in capitalism, bro. It's just, well, what works? What's going to get us our money back? What's going to get the investment back? And instead of actually feeding the people or even listening to the people to see what they want, we just say, well, we're going to put you in a position to where you happen to tell us what you want, and then we eavesdrop on you, or we put you in a position to where we accidentally leak your data, and then we give that data to somebody who sells the products that you want, and then exchange for a little bit of cut on the back end. Does this sound like Cambridge Analytica a little bit? And then on the back end of that, what's going to happen? Oh, that company just happens to sell you an ad or give you an ad for a toaster, and you just texted Mima that you wanted a toaster. Or maybe you just typed in new car in your search bar, and you happen to get an ad for a new car for affordable cars in your area? Just little things like that. And it's just like, well, if it's just so convenient, if my app just always knows what I want, why would I even bother taking responsibility for the hard work that is the relationship of knowing who I am enough to know what it is I want and just know that what my body is just kind of reacting for and to be able to differentiate that. We've grown so codependent on thinking that we can receive all that the outside world gives us through these platforms. We can receive our community, we can receive money, we can receive connection, we can receive inspiration, everything from these platforms. And we think, and we're so codependent on them. And we don't realize, no. The reason why you can't do everything all at once is because when you're really existing in the real world, hey, it's not that easy to maintain 20 different relationships with 20 different people in the real world. It's easy to do that on your phone. All right. You see what I'm saying? Like think about when you're living in the real world, you have to really think about the responsibility it takes because you don't just get to own something by thinking about you owning it. You have to actually cultivate it and invest in it every single day. And a lot of people can't juggle balancing not only their career, but their relationship and their family and their fitness and their education and their networking and their future and their legacy. A lot of people can't manage all of that. But it's so much easier to gain validation from acting like you are managing all of that and then selling the illusion on social media to vulnerable people who probably don't have access to that opportunity rather than actually living that life because you probably won't have time to sell dreams to other people on social media and then actually make a real bag off of selling people those dreams and then selling them dreams so hard that they buy the courses you sell them as well. Now, and again, I'm not going to say my courses are bad. My courses are amazing. If you buy my courses, you're going to get a whole lot more than anything you get. But these other people that be selling you stuff, especially how to make 10K a month, how to do this, how to do that, you're shelling them. You're paying for the dates that they taken these girls on, these Instagram models on. I hope you know that. You are paying for the dates that they going on with the same OnlyFans girls that they be hating on. Remember that. Every time you buy one of these courses, let's read this together because I got to remind you that popcorn reading never affected me when I was in school. But y'all, I don't know. That's the reason why I made this a video series instead of a book because I don't know how many people could read. To a slave that doesn't know of salvation within, self-acceptance, and that's never going to come from a system that derives its power off of needing you to hate yourself enough to sacrifice yourself to be exploited for the sake of being validated by the system that takes 99% more out of you than the 1% that it sells you the hope that it'll give you. They will be sedated in the mind and body to endure the suppression of their soul that knows true salvation doesn't exist in the world outside of us. That knows that you have to go within to go out there, and you keep going out there in the world and you keep coming home to not only bring back the lessons and the gifts that you get from the world, but to keep cultivating that universe that is your soul inside of you. Let me go back because I didn't know that was one full sentence. They'll be sedated in the mind and body to endure the suppression of their soul that knows true salvation doesn't exist in the world beyond us, but within us, only accessed, I should have put accessed, I apologize, through self-acceptance and personal responsibility. And that is a constant struggle that you can only sacrifice when you give up your salvation to the world outside of you. You give up that ability to be autonomous and to take responsibility for your circumstances to the world beyond you. It doesn't only have to be in the sense of like, well, you know what? This community like accepts me for who I am. So like, I'm just going to exist here for like forever. It can be the person who's paying your bills when you know you're supposed to be an entrepreneur or you're supposed to pursue a passion or a creative art. But you keep working that job because it just pays the bills enough. It just allows you to keep showing up without investing every day, not knowing if you're going to get something on the other end. You just keep showing up. And now this is me speaking directly to you, creative artists who know you're working a job that you hate. Think about that. It's not just drugs that sedate people. It's just having enough that sedates people and keeps people living in survival mode rather than breaking free from survival mode and getting into living mode. And what's scary is that a lot of people don't know how to appreciate living mode enough. They get there and then they start adding more work to that living mode because they feel like more time and more freedom means they should enslave themselves more because they don't know that, hey, you know what? The whole reason why we was working hard in the first place and surviving was so we could create a foundation on top of that and we didn't have to share that survival with anybody else. It's interesting. It's like the world wants you to reject with inside first and then go into and complete yourself on the outside world. But fuck, I actually forgot what the analogy was I was going to use. I was going to use a real good analogy, and I'm going to actually just sit here for like 20 seconds and see if I can remember it because it was real good. Something about you. If I remember it, I'll add it in here. But something about you. Look, the point of what I'm trying to say here is when you look within first and you develop that relationship with yourself, the only person that can develop that relationship with yourself, when you do that, you begin to know yourself, like not just believe who you are. You know yourself because you know yourself to a level that the whole world does not get to know you at. Just you, and then the divine that you believe in. When you know yourself, it's harder for you to be manipulated by what the world is attempting to convince you that you are. Because again, this is the thing that a lot of people don't understand. The world only sees you for what you are currently presenting yourself to be. Not everything that you have the potential to be. You have to constantly put that potential into the world. And that's the thing. A lot of people just, they get scared of getting hated on, getting shitted on, getting rejected. After a couple of times, they're just like, I'm just going to be whatever gives me that validation, that salvation. But I'm not going to keep on putting myself out there because those people, those successful people, especially the people who didn't come from shit, ended up being successful. It's because they know, hey, I am this person, but you in the world, I'm still convincing you people in the world to believe in what I know. I am knowing myself enough to put myself out there, and whether it's me leading the way or me serving my people, I know. And I'm getting you guys I'm putting myself out there so you guys can feel it. And if you believe hard enough, you guys are going to see it too. Amazing. Amazing. We don't have to get into every single one of these directly, but these are just some of, and there's many more, of course, but these are just some of the conditional means of salvation that are fed to slaves as a means of getting us, just like I was describing in that DEI section, as a means of pulling us back as far back as possible into just further and further and further into the psychosis that we're in, but not allowing us the opportunity to say, hey, do you even want to be a part of this? Because that would mean the people who are convincing us to stay in this system, to stay fetishizing our suffering, those people don't get to win and win off the exploitation of our ignorance. They would have to find their own wealth, meaning they would have to look within themselves, meaning they would have to do so much trauma and healing work on a societal level to access true wealth, not just the wealth they're able to exploit and steal from other people. It'd probably lead to self-destruction completely. It would show us that the parasite cannot exist without a host body and without an ignorant host body at that. But the parasite has gotten so smart, it lets the host continue to recreate itself just to sacrifice itself to the parasite. That's how smart the parasite's gone. It said, you know what? I can't just keep convincing externally these people to buy into this and to keep letting me invade its systems and to keep letting me enslave its people, its creations. I have to get inside and I have to genetically convince it that it needs this system more than this system needs it. It needs the parasite more than the parasite needs it. we already described this, but the only thing that I need to talk about here is AI is the final rug pull of capitalism. If you can get if these people, these capitalists can get the masses to really buy into this, to really bite the AI bullet. I hope I'm saying that properly, that phrase properly. But if they can get the masses to buy this and to buy all the dehumanization and the enslavement and the mass destruction and the environmental issues that are going to be a consequence of this, if they can get people to buy this, this is the final rug pull. This is going to be the greatest rug pull of all time. On a global sense, this will make the rich versus the poor, like it won't even be a war. It'll just be the way it is until the entirety of this monstrosity ends up destructing itself. And I'm telling you, people who will have access, and I'm not trying to fearmonger, but I genuinely believe people who will have access to a free, if you even want to call it that, a free life will be like that middle, if you even want to call it a middle class, will just be, it'll almost be non-existent. It'll just be the people who have exorbitant amounts of wealth and capital, and then who they buy access or share, really sell access to true freedom to. And mind you, I actually want to make another claim here. I don't even think the people who own all the freedom or own all the access to capital can even give you freedom. Freedom is something that you have to take. In the same way that I said power is something that can't be taken from you, freedom is something that you have to take, because you don't take it, you have to give it to yourself. And the only way you can give yourself freedom is if your brain is turned on, you're aware enough to understand that you're even enslaved in the first place. And many people are so enmeshed and so in love with their own trauma and slavery that they aren't even willing to make that first exception or that first acceptance. And in doing that will lead to the domino effect that is realizing all this other stuff. So why would you put people into these like Ready Player One types levels of society, especially poor people? Total distraction. Only do what we, the powers that be, want you to do. Live beneath our foot as long as possible. And if we want to pick one of you to exploit or to represent your people sometime in the future because we think you're human beings today, even though we won't tomorrow, we'll do it. But we can't have the masses, especially marginalized people, having any kind of connection to grounding or salvation through the earth beyond the owners of material capital on earth. Make total disconnection between the people of earth and the earth that they live on, and make an entire like inner membrane of technology to enslave people inside that matrix, to stop them and just forcefully indoctrinate them to reject themselves and never access salvation from within themselves, and then never see beyond the system far enough to be able to access salvation from the nature that is constantly being exploited and stepped upon or painted over as a means of forcefully instating or implementing this society that we live in. Another hot take that isn't really a hot take, but it's a hot take because I'm hot and I'm giving it. So that's a hot take. And slavery is America's natural resource. It's something that we don't want to accept, but it's something that is true because we don't have a natural resource here. If we did have a natural resource here, the indigenous people of America or of this land before it was America are the only people who know how to cultivate that, how to care for that, and how to be able to value that. But in the world they were living in, they were not here to exploit value. They were here to share love and care and respect amongst each other and humanity and for the earth that they lived upon. And they were taken advantage of for that by people who think that they are the more superior race of human beings on planet Earth. Remember that. People who had so much value that there was no means to impose illusions of scarcity, because they were so selfless and sharing and caring and loving to not only themselves, but to the visitors that came and took advantage of them. Those are the savages. But the people who came with nothing but diseases and ignorance and lies, the people that came and destroyed everything to impose their own society, those are the savants. Those are the civilized ones. Okay. The people who imported the worst disease on human earth themselves into this country, they like, are we starting to see here? Projections. A shirt that I'm going to put on my Cosmic Nomad website very soon here. Unwarranted accusations always equals guilty projections. Send that to your ex. They're going to hate you for that. But slavery is the only natural resource of America. And we're just finding out what human beings we have to dehumanize enough to turn into slaves in a way that we can just accept that they're being enslaved, or the general masses can accept. And the powers that be are trying to figure out who those people are. That's what scares me the most. Because if we can't find out a group of people, it's just going to be poor people. And then whoever is beneath poor people, homeless people, disabled people, social rejects, they will all be the first. And then we'll just start going from the ground up, colonizing new groups of people to dehumanize and to not accommodate, as a means of justifying the slavery that needs to take place to facilitate this new industrial revolution that is being forced upon very quickly in the West. And I think it's as a means to save us from the $35 trillion that's increasing of national debt that we have. That's a consequence of going to war and losing money. And then also not only going to war, but giving power to tech bros and finance bros all across the nation as a means of letting them gamble on businesses, make billions of dollars for themselves and their own estates, and then leave our country ass naked. This is why we go internationally and terrorize people in other countries. This is why we go overthrow governments. This is why we are the world bully. Because we don't create wealth. We own and exploit other people's wealth. We don't create anything. We sell dreams. I don't know if you guys can see it or not, but I can see it just right now. I can see it straight through. I can see it clear as day. Project 2025, the whole entire point of it, the only point of it is to turn America into a Christian nationalist state. And then not even who owns the churches. Well, think about this fundamentally. Whoever funds the churches owns the nation. That's all I have to say. And when the reason why they wanted a separation of church and state so bad is because once you put religion into mainstream, like federal government, you're allowing subjective opinion of a cult group to take over an objective society of diverse people, allowing the cult group to federally leverage, forgive me, I'm saying that wrong, to leverage the federal government to punish their political opposition. They can use taxpayer funds to punish their political opposition by means of saying it's what their God would want them to do. Like, how crazy is that? And you can utilize religious psychosis to instate, almost walk down the aisle, the wealthy and the poor in this marriage of instating an American oligarchy. And the rich and the poor are just walking down the aisle together in love as we are about to instate our own level of eternal fascism. Because it doesn't matter. And nothing else matters at the end of the day. The American oligarchy is creating a society of absolute power, economically, politically, socially, culturally, and spiritually. Us versus them, and the haves versus the have-nots, and a hell of a lot of people have a hell of a lot less than the people who have anything at all. It's federally mandate and support the dehumanization of real human beings who are not being supported by that same federal government, because the federal government is being exploited by wealthy people as a means of justifying the modern day enslavement of human beings if we aren't enslaved by wages and debt already. I'm sorry for that. I'm sorry for that. But as we already described, I apologize for us going back and forth with the sociological to the philosophical to the psychological, but it's all the same thing to me. It's all important to the all encompassing to the conversation we're having. But what I wanted to say at the end of that section 3, I believe, but I didn't get to say is that mass inciting or the mass creation at scale of incels is going to only further push us into a position to where these single men are not only like they're going to become so hyper masculine and so apart from women. There's going to be like a subsect version of homosexuality that gets developed from this. And I don't because I don't think we've seen it yet or we are ready to receive it because we are just like so hating of like just genuine self-accepting gay people that we aren't willing to see through, hey, look at these all these down low like people in the backgrounds just exploiting the gay community for their own personal gain and then selling them out in their real world or not protecting them in their real world with their real identity. So I think that with a lot more, which is a take I'll get later into this, but with a lot more women leaving traditional, especially leaving just losers and like going to engage with either successful men or going to engage with the men that they actually want to be around, not just everybody because they have to exist with them, then I think that so many men in especially men who don't know how to build community off of like anything other than struggle and pain and like trauma, these guys are going to end up just accepting their fate as to not having access to women and then turning that into like a bastard form of homosexuality, which even that won't work. And I think that even happens on the women's side too, and is happening actively on the women's side. There's a lot of like, again, this is going to sound like me invalidating people's sexuality. So I don't want to say that. But there's a lot of people who are so deeply traumatized by one gender, the opposite gender of themselves, that they feel like the only salvation they can get is by just loving their own gender. This is more for my trauma-based people in relationships, not like my people who are just born gay. Like that's natural. I'm talking about the down low people that be the experimenters, the tweet and deleters. I hate I'm even saying that because I hate that nigga. But I believe that. I believe this red pill movement, like once all the money has just been siphoned from all these young, vulnerable boys and they all have nothing but each other and like their trauma bond, I think that the trauma bond is just going to get so much to a point where they're like, well, I'm so like, I've never felt so seen and loved and cared for in a way. And then it's just going to turn like sexual. And these red pill communities are going to be like just either down low cults of like men's like kind of like again it's a pseudo form of like homosexuality because it's not coming from self-acceptance. It's coming from I hate the world that I don't get access to so much that I am going to be this way, or like I am so anti reality that I am now this. And it's just like it's so far on the other side of being able to look at oneself with love and care and say, you know what, like I am this way because I am this way and now I'm expressing myself in this way. It's like more of a trauma based. And that's why like I have to keep on reinforcing that because this is not like anti-LGBTQ or like homophobic. This is I'm saying this as a means of like I'm pointing so deep into the community. I see niggas who's playing the wrong game and niggas who's wearing masks. Okay. And if that isn't like a widespread thing that ends up happening, which it might not be because like homosexuality collectively is just like still very shamed to like religious patriarchy, there will be so many of these incel boys that are waiting for a leader but don't have one. I just read something that may get me canceled for being racist. Um, there's going to be a this esque, like a Hitler esque character that comes to save these incels, but not. And you could almost like call you could almost call Andrew Tate like the first one, or like one of the main ones that almost had the success as what this person will have. But this is like an antichrist level character, bro. That I'm in my brain, I'm perceiving like an antichrist level character that's just full on, just raging misogynist, but like it's to the point where these people just accept it. And it's not like, and I'm not saying it properly. I'm not saying like Myron Gaines, like fresh and fit misogynist. I'm saying like Homelander from The Boys, like somebody who wears this identity of very socially acceptable and socially desirable, but is just so blatantly misogynistic. It's like all you had to do was just mask the misogyny and the oppression in some like sexy person, and like now people are just gonna like bite it. Like if the something that Jim Jones said that was like so hilarious, but it's just so true, is like, you know, you've made it in life when the girls want to sleep with you and the boys want to be you. And that's what it's going to take. All that it needs is somebody who the young incel boys want to be like, and somebody, not that the girls want to sleep with necessarily, but that the girls that the incel boys want to get with, if it seems like this leader of their community is getting them, or at least can show them a way to have access to these women, then that is going to be their leader. And the incel boy community will prop up their own Jehovah, their own savior. And the implications that that will have in a world that is already so horribly like deep in patriarchal psychosis is going to be ridiculous, because that will be the social leader. That will be the person that says the things that aren't allowed to be said in traditional federal government or traditional politics. That's going to be the person that's able to incite the cult psychosis, the side groups. You know how I was saying earlier in section 2 about how the Democrats and liberals both have, or forgive me, Democrats and Republicans both have that like side group of radical people in their audience that they don't want to act like they're going to feed on, but they just got to sell them enough dreams to like kind of act like they're included. This is exactly what I'm talking about. You need those outside independent media social leaders to be making sure that you're harboring all of that like unsafe community, but you're still allowing them to exist close enough to feel like they're included. So when you need to mobilize them, you can use them. But the scary part is that when you're mobilizing people on the left or like the liberal side, it's just a bunch of like passionate college kids and young people who want to fight for like marginalized rights. But when you mobilize people on the right and the Republican side, it's like the straight up KKK and like neo Nazis. So it's like, wait a second, this isn't even this isn't even like 1-to-1 ratio. This isn't even apples and oranges. This is like giving somebody an apple and then giving them a rock and then asking them what tastes better. Because of this, and because again, this was the powers that be were able to see the lacking experience of young males across the nation, and able to who I'm already losing the word that I wanted to use there, but able to capitalize on that. I've said capitalism about 45 times already. I don't know how I can miss that one. Because of that, I don't know how quickly this will happen, but it has already started with Roe v. Wade being overturned. But we are creating a society to, again, go back to funneling women into second class citizens, to only be used to serve the well being of the patriarchy and the men who are successful enough to have access to these women. Because, again, this isn't a human to human connection, this is a human to product connection, man to man transaction. This is why, like, I really want you guys, like, when you be doing your little research on trad wives and all that, like, I really want you guys to see how nostalgia's got a lot of you guys like messed up. Nostalgia's got a lot of you guys messed up, and not living or listening to the real reality of people who were living on the non-beneficiary side of of the circumstances or those systems. That would stop you from promoting that like you do, like it's some kind of freaking identity, some kind of freaking Katniss Everdeen, some kind of freaking movie role that you're just playing. And even worse, like we don't, it's a lot of people, I think because of capitalism, a lot of people may start to even want to fetishize not having responsibility, as in like just being a stay-at-home. I'm not saying that there's no responsibility there, but I think a lot of people may fetishize being supported completely by somebody else in this near future that we're living in, because it just seems so much better than having to actually work way harder for way less and to build something that's real and that can give residuals in the way future. But telling you, bro, that trad wife life isn't something that people be dreaming about, especially a lot of people who are in that situation. Like really sit here and think, what happens when you have the third kid and then the husband looks at you and says, "You're not as hot as my secretary." What happens when your husband wants some fun outside and then comes back and brings you something that you didn't want? Like I'm not here to fearmonger. I'm here to just tell you that social media has been selling you a dream, bro, and you guys are at the mercy of them dreams. You guys are about to sell your whole reality to buy them. And this is something that could have honestly been put a little earlier in the slides as I was making them, probably towards the end of section 3. But it's good that we're doing it right now because that forces us to really recap. I genuinely believe that the powers that be, they weren't mad at January 6th. They want January 6th to happen in the communities, though. Like they want everyday people to hate each other enough so we do it to each other, or we have to punish each other in some kind of grand culture war that just gets to be broadcasted all over mainstream media, and we get to put ads in between coverage of, oh goodness, people are attacking people from New York and Detroit and from Washington and Miami, and red versus blue, red versus blue, red versus blue. Just constant dramatization, constant sensationalism, constant just BS to steal our attention from the things that really matter. But this is the mercy of existing not only so heavily on the internet, but even COVID forcing us on these digital platforms, and the owners of these tech platforms knowing that they could turn ridiculous profits by just turning the algorithms into ways that could get us to stick on them rather than actually giving us the opportunity to, I don't know, build communities online to help us transition better into the real world once we got there. But they're not thinking about that. They're thinking about the next million. They're thinking about the next yacht. They're thinking about the next trip to, what was I saying? Boca Raton. Is that even a real place? They're not thinking about the consumer even, which is sad because the consumer is the only reason why they're rich. But it's okay because all those tech cronies, they own our country now. If you hated marginalized people so much, they own our country. And they own you too. Look at that. So the whole entire point is to deprive the people of opportunity so much, but then get them to think that the other that they're supposed to blame is an other poor person who also doesn't have opportunity. And then we will fight each other to try to loot each other from the crumbs that we already barely have access to. Instead of looking up at the table and saying, God damn it, why are 12 people at the table eating 1,200 cakes? Every single one of us down here could have 3 cakes. Every single one of us down here could have 3 cakes each, and they can still have their cakes. But they're just shelling off crumbs, the crumbs that fall off their mouth that they aren't able to clean up because they have maids wipe their mouth for them. I'm sorry I get like real figurative and like analogy. I analogize so much, but like I have to really show you guys how it's purely idiotic how we're submitting ourselves to this. And I'm gonna keep on going back to that thing that when Kanye said slavery was a choice, he meant today. That boy was not talking about all them years ago. He's talking about today. And they keep on selling us the fetishization of our suffering as a means of getting us to cling onto our own slavery, or at least manifest our own slavery in our own lives, as a means of just stopping us from ever accessing that life on the other side of capitalist expectation to perform and to produce every second of the fucking day. But the point is to not look up. Don't look at the powers that be who are creating their own Mount Olympus. Look at your neighbor. Hate your neighbor because their skin is black, because they have boobs, because they look different or they speak a different language. Like, just hate them. Don't hate the person that's holding you back from being able to make decisions in your life and actualize the things that you really want. Hate the person because they're different than you. And organize yourselves just enough to be able to turn it into a war that we can broadcast on the internet. And then we're going to say, oh, well, we're only putting this on the news so we can inform the people. No. We're putting this on the news so we can sell ads. That's what we're doing. We're putting this on the news. We're inciting this kind of rhetoric. We're enslaving people to their individual echo chambers. We're putting people at the mercy of their trauma and of their desires instead of giving them something to actually believe in. So we can make more sales the longer that they spend on these digital platforms, right? The longer that they watch our news channels, right? We are going to put the whole entire reality we live in at the mercy of the lies and the mush that we feed them on these platforms if they aren't just receiving brain rot out the ears. Force the people to pick a side and make it seem like the biggest thing on planet Earth. You know what's even worse? These guys will probably broadcast it on some like international channel as a means of getting people to have global ad time. It's like a years-long Super Bowl. And the most important part of this is there will obviously be one side that gets invested in. Like that's probably the most important thing I can tell you of this whole thing. One side will be invested in, and it'll be the side that the powers that be want to rebirth or want to take ownership of America. And if you haven't seen what's been happening, like, you already know what demographic of people that is. The real savages. These people just don't want to use all this high military tech and all of this ridiculously invested weaponry. They don't want to directly use that on the same taxpayers that shell all of our money into it. They want to accidentally incite a culture war so grand that American people are afraid enough to destroy and delete each other. And they'll just do the cleanup work afterwards and act like nothing happened once they get what they want. Very, very, very scary times. And I'm not saying this is I'm not saying this is a means to fearmonger. I'm telling you as a means of asking, like, is this what you want? Like, is this the country you live in? Are these your people? Are these your leaders? They ain't mine. All right. We kind of ran over this. Oh, perfect. Okay, we kind of went over this a little bit. But if I'm being honest with you, I'm just going to go over it just real quick again, because we already went over this. Nara Smith, this is not me hating on you. And Lucky Smith, this is not me hitting on her either. This is me just offering what I believe is going to happen. Because, mind you, we're going back to a world where it's not only men who get to make decisions. It is white, land owning, capital having, eligibility qualifying men who will converse with each other concerning ownership of the entire world. And then we, who don't get to participate in those decisions being made, get to have our lives completely at the mercy of the decisions, or really the consequences, of the decisions that were made. So get ready. You thought that this was just going to be the political jab at the person who's been holding you back, who's been making your life a living hell for the past 50 years because you decided to give marginalized people human rights? You're about to see in less than 180 days, not even 5 years. You're about to see in less than 180 days, it was never marginalized people that you needed to worry about. It may take 5 years, it may take 25 years to see it, but you're going to see you didn't even sell us out. You sold this whole entire country out. You sold the whole country out. The reason why I say that is because that gives marginalized people an opportunity to see if you can actualize yourself beyond this illusion of what America is and the American dream. Then I'll tell you one thing here. Leave. And also Marcus Garvey, leave and find people who love and care for you, authentic to who you are and how you are raising yourself. Look up people on the free internet while it's still free. I don't even know how the hell the internet's free, but look up on the internet people, especially on YouTube, how people who have gone and to travel to places, especially people who look and live like you. Because you don't be looking to a white dude who went to Thailand and expecting the same experience if you're a black man. I don't know if I meant that in a positive or negative way, but hopefully, just be cognizant as to your own ability to serve yourself and to be self-sufficient. And make sure that if there's a decision, especially a major decision that gets made in this country that you aren't comfortable living underneath, you have the means of being able to pick yourself up in a 6 to 9 month span. That's it. And it's crazy because there's so many, it's almost like the whole past 50 or 40 years was like a whole trap. Anybody who can buy all that the immediate traps that are just given to everybody, anybody who could just fall themselves, whether it's credit card debt or it's university debt or it's this type of debt or this type of, you have to sit in this program for this long, and if you don't finish, you're not going to be good enough. There's just so many traps that people have fallen for. And now we're all starting to realize that most of us never had a future to take from, but we were sold the illusion, hey, you can take from your future and just use it to fund today. And then once you get to that future, you can pay off the debt that you've incurred up to that point. Yeah, there was never a future in the first place. We were just given debt, straight up just given a sack of debt. And probably going through experiences or eligibility criteria that didn't even matter because some people could just make a phone call or two and get in. I want you guys to see who you are, because if you don't see yourself as more worthy or more human than what America sees you as, you will be at the mercy of how America decides to not only treat you, but exploit you as a means of investing in and inciting its new age American dream. And again, what I said in the beginning of this, it's going to cost slaves to create a second American dream. And it's going to cost American slaves to create a second American dream. People won't just be codependent on a system when this country can't make money off you. This is why social welfare is so ass backwards today. Because instead of actually forcing billionaires and whatnot to pay their taxes, and then maybe social welfare programs can be efficient enough to actually serve the needs of the people who are disadvantaged in this system. No. Let the billionaires run their own nonprofit organizations so they can just avoid taxes even further, sacrificing more money that is made in this system out of the system in their own probably international investments. And then we sit here and blame poor people for existing. How many more times can you do that before it's just not going to matter anymore and we're living in Gotham City, Gotham, America? I should have put this actually on top, but this will be the new American royalty is the oligarchy. And I don't know if they all want to be seen or if they have been seen, but the new American royalty is the oligarchy. And This whole Christian nationalism split that we got going on, the whole entire point of it is to be able to justify dehumanizing all the people that we loaned human rights to over the past 50 to 60 years. And it's by, and I guess, and the worst part is you justify unforgivable sins committed to Earth's people by saying you're doing it on behalf of a God that cannot be questioned. Final piece right here. America is the belly of the beast. I was supposed to make this video more than like 2 years ago. This was supposed to be one of the first or second, I don't know if it was vlogs or podcasts I was supposed to make, but insecurity sucks. So that never gets anything done. But now we're here. So I guess everything kind of divine timing comes into fruition when it needs to. Let me tell you something right here. We either sacrifice the illusion of America that is being fed to us, that is literally off the back of the marginalized people that we need to justify exploiting to make it happen, to give this opportunity at all. Because we have no natural resource other than what? Slavery. We either sacrifice the illusion of America and all the faulty systems that were built, I should have included it, all the faulty systems that were built behind it to reinvest in a new world, or we sacrifice everybody's future and force the old world forward, inevitably self-destructing our entire planet over a minority population, not minority black skin, because you hate black people so much, minority as in there are so few people who have so much wealth. Inevitably self-destructing our entire planet over a minority population's greed and narcissism. One thing I'm starting to realize is this whole war on, but truly a genocide, as we all understand, anybody who has more than 2 brain cells that are functioning and talking to each other understands it's a genocide happening. That is the first leg getting the European powers back into, and not just the European, but the Western powers, back into Africa on the northern end as a means of recolonizing Africa. Because like I said, when I got to in section 1, speaking about the boomer wealth transfer, Africa has the youngest population, the youngest, largest, most efficient growing population in the world, and will have for the next 25 years, as the population of America is decreasing at exponential rates itself. And not just the population, because you know what they're talking about when they say population. The white American population is decreasing simultaneous to the increasing African population. It's all, the whole world we live on is connected. And the worst part is that this new world order they're trying to like get you to be afraid of, it's already happening. It's a divided monopoly of global governments and then like broken religions that people have just like found ways to agree upon. But the only reason why there's no active, actually there is one, but we live under a broken global monopoly of resource ownership. And war is just the business of who owns the world and the world's people. That's literally all war is. And if you're not looking at it like profits and losses, but you're looking at it like human lives are being lost, you're going to take it too emotionally and not see that it's war is just the business of world ownership. And we literally gamble the lives of real human beings, the people who live in those countries, as a means of exacting those transactions. And that can only happen in a world where the minority population feels like they don't get to do real, genuine business. They have to go terrorize other people. They have to go colonize and steal and exploit. And that's the only way they go about doing business, quote unquote, because that's not real business. That's like alien invasion type stuff. But all I know is that America is the belly of the beast. And the whole point, especially for Project 2025, there's a very strong knowing. This is the only time these people, parasites, if you want to call them, patriotic parasites, this is the only time, if not the most important time, for these people to be able to exact or make permanent the reality that they want to live in for at least the foreseeable future. This is the only time they're going to have to do it. Because if they don't, they just won't. And not only or is this generation of these people, like the colonizer kids, they've never known a reality where they have not been on top of everybody else. But also, what happens when the world finally gets flipped upside down and we realize that we actually just flipped it right side up? How will we punish the people who got us to believe and forced us to flip our world upside down? How will those people be held accountable in a world where they don't have power to escape accountability or power to destroy their competition anymore? That's why I say America's the belly of the beast, gang. I'm glad we got through all of that, bro. That makes me too happy, bro. That makes me too happy because we only got one more section to get into. Oh, we only got one more section. All right, I'm excited. I'm not gonna get too excited though, but I'm excited. I hope you guys know that. Thank you for being here. Thank you for watching this whole thing, and we will be back very shortly. We're going to be back very shortly. I'm going to come back in tomorrow. I'll finish this thing up, and then I will sacrifice my whole entire reputation behind it. But thank you for being here. Thank you for watching these videos. I know they're all long, 2 hours, 4 hours, 6 hours. This whole thing is probably like 12 hours right now, but whatever it is, I appreciate you guys for being here, and I appreciate you guys for just kicking it with us. Us, me, and the voices in my head. I'm not solo in this. And yeah, take it easy. Happy holidays, because I guarantee you this is coming out on Christmas Day. And let's see where I end up. Hopefully not like my